Karen. I'm 33 years old. We're a family of 3. My husband William, who's the same age, and our 3-year-old daughter, Evelyn. My husband's family runs a tutoring center. Both my father-in-law and mother-in-law used to be teachers, and my husband also has a teaching license. They are affluent and well-educated, and I sometimes find it hard to believe that I'm part of such a family. At first, my parents and friends were worried about me, but there was nothing to worry about. They're really good people. Even though I was the athlete type, in contrast, my in-laws welcomed me with open arms. My mother-in-law was thrilled to have a daughter. Although I was nervous at first, my strength lies in my cheerful and lively character. I decided to be myself, and we built a relationship from there. I hold a certified arborist certification, and I do health assessments on trees, pruning, planting, and relocation, as well as consulting. I studied hard to get my certification, and even after getting out into the field, it's a physically demanding job. Not only do you need brains, but it's a job that really requires physical work. I always take care of my health, and I'm quite strong for a woman. Right now, my husband is a tutor in the family-run tutoring center, but he used to be an elementary school teacher. The first time I met him was when I visited the school he worked at for a meeting about the health and care of the trees. After giving birth, I took parental leave and just returned to work last year. Since our daughter is still young, I prioritize my family thanks to the understanding of my workplace. But there are times when I just can't make it in time to pick her up. When that happens, my mother-in-law helps out, and my husband will pick up our daughter if he can. I appreciated the support from my work, and I was living a fulfilling life. However, there was one person in my married life who troubled me. It was my sister-in-law. She's the wife of my husband's brother. My husband has 2 brothers, and my husband is the second oldest. The youngest son is still single. The eldest son, Richard's wife, is Sarah, and she's the source of my problems. She's basically a housewife, but she also helps with the accounting and administrative work of the tutoring center. They have a 5-year-old boy, and they seem to be planning to have him take an entrance exam for a private elementary school. From the first time I met Sarah at the in-laws' house, I knew she was a different kind of person. She was petite, always well-dressed, and her hair was neat, and I thought she was wonderful when I saw her smiling. But she had 2 faces. It was when we were in the kitchen helping my mother-in-law, and she left for a moment. "Hey, can't you do something about your appearance?" Huh? Sarah, who had been smiling, had a voice that was so different. I thought she was a different person. "You're always wearing clothes that look worn out and dirty. Don't you realize you're the only one who sticks out here?" I'm embarrassed. Well, I find these clothes easy to move in, and I have to chase after my daughter all the time because she's still little." "I have a child too, you know." Sarah sighed dramatically and seemed to have more to say, but she returned to her usual demeanor when she saw my mother-in-law returning. "Oh, what were you 2 talking about?" "Oh, we were just talking about child-rearing." It's amazing how she can change her voice in an instant. I wonder if she has a sensor that automatically switches when my mother-in-law comes. My mother-in-law looked at me as if to say, "Is that so?" "Yes, we were talking about our kids." Upon hearing this, Sarah seemed satisfied. I'm not afraid of skinny Sarah, but it's not like I can't shrug off this level of sarcasm, and I didn't want to worry my mother-in-law unnecessarily. I've got a few friends dealing with issues with their mother-in-laws and sister-in-laws. It's not unusual, after all, to hear about stress due to the mother-in-law factor. Given this context, my mother-in-law is like a saint, always rooting and supporting my career. I thought I could deflect my sister-in-law's snide comments easily. However, every time we crossed paths, she would continue to demean me. Once, while on a work errand, I bumped into my sister-in-law, Sarah, who was chatting with a couple of her mom friends. We locked eyes, and not wanting to be rude, I greeted her. "Hello, Sarah." "Oh, hi there." I was in a rush and moved on after the brief exchange, but later that night she called my home. "What on earth do you think you're doing?" She snapped at me, her tone extremely aggressive from the get-go. "Huh? What do you mean?" "Earlier today, don't you dare approach me in public dressed like that. What's with your work outfit? I can't believe you would walk around outside looking like that. Did you see us? It's only proper to look presentable, even if you have nothing special going on. We're all mom friends who are preparing our kids for private school entrance exams. We live in a different world from you. Oh, I was so embarrassed. She launched into a tirade without pause. Well, I was working, so I was indeed in my work clothes, I replied. I don't care about that. Just don't approach me anymore when we meet outside, okay? It's embarrassing. But isn't that even stranger? We're family after all. That's what I've been trying to tell you, haven't I? You're just not fitting for the family. Just so you know, I've never considered you a sister-in-law. She hung up abruptly, leaving me stunned. She really went out of her way to call and vent her feelings. Although she consistently complained about me at family gatherings, what's worse is that she only reveals her true colors when we're alone. She prides herself in being a fashionable, high-class woman from a wealthy family. It's fine if she enjoys that. What I don't understand is her constant need to attack me, simply because I don't align with her preferences. Yes, she always dresses elegantly in sports accessories, but why does she need so many? I wonder if her quiet husband, my brother-in-law, lets her shop as much as she wants. He probably doesn't even know about this side of her. It's just who she is. I've kept silent about this to my brother-in-law and mother-in-law, but I did let my husband in on it, as it was becoming a source of stress. Huh? She doesn't seem like that. He initially shrugged it off. A few days later, my mother-in-law called me. There was a family dinner coming up over the weekend, and she wanted to let me know the time and place. We each live about 30 minutes away by car. Normally, she doesn't interfere with her son's household. However, she insists on gathering the entire family for my father-in-law's birthday, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. This time, it was because my father-in-law's birthday was approaching. This time, we managed to reserve a private room at his favorite steakhouse. It's our first time going there as a family, but it's really good. I hope you're looking forward to it. Oh, I am, thank you. While I was genuinely excited, I dreaded seeing my sister-in-law again. You don't sound very enthusiastic. Are you busy at work? Oh, I'm okay. I'm perfectly fine. Uh-oh, had my voice betrayed my feelings? I hurriedly reassured her. Karen, if there's anything bothering you at home, please let me know, okay? Our home? We're managing just fine, even when work runs late. You help us out. I really appreciate all you do for us. It's not about your family, though. Huh? I was puzzled, not understanding what she meant. Then the weekend came, and with it, the dinner party. It was my father-in-law's birthday celebration, a chance to express our gratitude for my father-in-law and mother-in-law. I resolved to celebrate wholeheartedly, and not to let my spiteful sister-in-law get to me. I left home early, and when I walked into the private room at the restaurant, I sighed with relief as my father-in-law, mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and sister-in-law had not yet arrived. I'd come early as to not keep my father-in-law waiting on his birthday celebration, and also because the less time I spent with Sarah, the better. However, my brother-in-law and Sarah showed up right after I did. Hello. Hi, Karen. Richard, it's nice to see you. After we exchanged greetings, my husband and brother-in-law started talking. Sarah, on the other hand, swiftly came over to me and looked me up and down before sighing. What are you wearing? For such an upscale restaurant, you could at least dress a bit nicer. How many times do I have to tell you? The demeaning comments started as usual, only in a lower tone. Is this really the time or place for that? I clenched my teeth and forced a smile. I chose this dress thinking about the occasion. Is it inappropriate? I mean, it's not from a high-end brand or anything. It's quite surprising you could show up in such a cheap outfit. You, despite being a woman, have such broad shoulders that the dress doesn't suit you. And your accessories? Just a wedding ring? You never wear nail polish either, and your hands look rough. I can't wear nail polish for my job. Isn't it inconvenient to do household chores with such long nails, Sarah? My job involves working with wood and soil in addition to household chores, so my hands tend to get rough. Not being able to wear nail polish was not something I was concerned about. Compared to the average woman, my masculinity is a testament to my hard work as a gardener. These hands, these shoulders, they are my pride, Yet she belittles them, and I couldn't help but retort, "What did you say? Are you suggesting that I don't do housework?" Perhaps my rebuttal did sit well with her. Sarah's voice grew louder. "I really can't stand you. I've been trying to help you out of kindness, but you never listen, and now you're resisting? It's unbearable to be lumped in with a rough woman like you." I messed up. My sister-in-law seemed to be losing sight of her surroundings in her anger. "This is my father-in-law's celebration today. Please don't bother me." "Huh? You're the one ruining everything. You're the one who doesn't belong in this family. I told you, I can't dine with someone as shabby as you. Go home." Wait, what? I have to go home? This dinner was organized by my mother-in-law, and the person ruining it is clearly her. I'll listen to your complaints about me later. I have things to say to you as well, but for now... I had decided to stand my ground, but not now. "Don't you dare talk back to me. Didn't you hear me? I said go home. In fact, leave this family." Just as my husband started to approach in response to Sarah's loud voice, the private room's door opened. "The one leaving should be you." My mother-in-law entered the room, quietly yet decisively. My father-in-law and their youngest son, John, also entered, and my mother-in-law gently closed the door. "What?" Sarah, who was fired up, must have remembered where she was and what was happening. She was lost for words, her mouth opening and closing in surprise. What was that about?" "Everyone, please sit down." Despite her soft voice, there was a compelling force in my mother-in-law that everyone obeyed. "It seems we need to have a chat before we can enjoy the birthday celebration. I'm sorry for this interruption." Seeing my father-in-law nod in agreement, my mother-in-law turned back to Sarah. "Sarah, what did you say to Karen?" Whoa, even my kind-hearted mother-in-law could dish out a strong sarcasm when needed. Sarah, flustered, answered, "Oh, just saying I'm looking forward to today's meal." "Did I hear wrong? I thought I heard get out." "Huh? No, that was a small argument. It was just a joke." She was still somewhat agitated, but I was impressed at how Sarah was trying to regain her usual cheerful demeanor. "An argument? What caused it? It seemed you were the one doing all the talking. Have you been bullying Karen like this whole time?" She probably heard everything from the door, staring straight at Sarah. I didn't bully her. I was just offering advice on manners and dress as a senior member of this household." "That didn't seem like advice, and everyone should be free to wear what they want as long as it's respectful. She wasn't dressed oddly." But wearing non-branded clothes in such a high-end restaurant, her makeup and accessories were minimal. I thought she shouldn't embarrass you and the rest." "Enough!" My mother-in-law's outburst made me jump, along with Sarah. The three brothers and my father-in-law knew that my mother-in-law was scary when angry. They seemed unfazed by the situation, showing picture books and speaking to the children to distract them. "No." "Sarah, you're the one who should be embarrassed. I had noticed that something was off about you two, even during gatherings at our house. I initially thought you were having friendly chats." "Huh? Friendly? Yes, friendly chats, right? Sarah gave me a desperate look that was completely different from before, but I avoided meeting her gaze. "For the record, Karen never snitched on you. You wasted her kindness, hoping you would eventually change. Your attitude only escalated." Well, that's..." Stammering, Sarah was met with my mother-in-law's even harsher tone. "And you always wear beautiful clothes and have so many purses." Yes, that's true. I always make sure to look presentable wherever I go." "Where does the money for that come from?" "Huh?" Just as she thought she could regain the upper hand, an unexpected question made Sarah freeze. That is, of course, from my..." "We're paying you for helping with the tuition and accounting at the tutoring school. Even if my son said you could use that money freely, it doesn't seem like it would be enough. Your clothes and purses are all designer brands." Well, because..." "Are you exploiting the fact that you're in charge of the household finances to satisfy your own desires?" What do you mean?" She stammered. I could see why she's confused. I was curious about the source of their money myself. I had always thought my brother-in-law was just a generous guy. Maybe he just left all the household finances to her. It's concerning to me that he didn't keep a closer eye on their spending. Maybe he trusted her because she acted as a good wife so well. When I think about it like that, I almost feel sorry for him. So, you've been spending money like water, and now you want to send your child to a private school? She asked. You've been settling aside funds for their education, right? What? You're not expecting us to pay, are you? No, not at all, but he's your adorable grandchild after all. Which is it? So she was planning to rely on my father-in-law and mother-in-law's money all along. Of course we love our grandchildren. We're thinking of supporting them financially if necessary, says my mother-in-law. Really? But only after you leave our home. What? No, there's no need for that. I'll apologize to Karen for telling her to leave. Karen? It's the first time she's referred to me by name. You will forgive me, right? We're sisters after all. Sisters? Only while you're married to my brother-in-law. My mother-in-law looks at me as if to sign that I should continue. Even if it's official, I don't want to become family. I don't think of you as a sister. Caught off guard, Sarah let out a weird noise. And that's not all. You've also been dipping into the money from the tutoring school. Sarah was speechless, her eyes wide in shock. Is that true? I was genuinely surprised by my mother-in-law's words. I had expected Sarah to use the household money freely, but I didn't think she would touch the funds from the tutoring school my in-laws run. You were clever enough to not get caught, so it took us a while to figure it out. Even Bob, who's been in charge of our accounts for years, was manipulated by you. Sarah's face turned pale. You were buying gifts like gift baskets for the suppliers of our teaching materials, expressing gratitude to teachers holding seminars, all this shopping under your charge. The amount on the receipts gradually increased. You made excuses that you were asked to give birthday presents, or that the requests came from me or my son. No, that's not. What are you talking about? You bought things other than gift baskets, labeling them as presents. This has never happened before. But it's our son's wife. Bob trusted you. He was told you took part-time lecturers to lunch, but in reality, you were dining and drinking tea with your mom friends. The suspicious receipts gradually increased, and Bob finally came to us. Even before that, my son had started investigating after noticing something strange. What? You betrayed the trust of all those who wanted to believe in you. It seems that dressing up is more important to you than anything else. It's not me, I didn't. Sarah looked at my brother-in-law as if begging for help, with a voice that's almost a whisper. But he just stared back coldly without saying a word. And if all this is true, I can't blame him. Karen is the opposite. Sure, she's not really into fashion, but she always puts herself second and values her family and her job. You seem to not care to know about her work, but being a certified arborist is an impressive qualification. I bet she studied hard for it. Oh. As Sarah was left speechless and utterly defeated, my mother-in-law suddenly started talking about me. Unconsciously, I felt a warmth welling up in my eyes. I respect her, thinking that if she wanted to continue her work, we should support her. Have you ever seen her working lively, not caring if her clothes get dirty or her hands are covered in soil? And you make fun of her? I was teary-eyed and silent, and Sarah was unable to make any excuses or act anymore. She just hung her head low. Our tutoring school may not match the major corporations, but we value our teachers and students and have earned their trust. We've grown little by little by addressing each student's individual issues and those of their families. What's important is people and hearts. You are the one that doesn't belong here. You are the one who should leave. My mother-in-law, who had declared it so clearly, was truly awesome. After that, Sarah, who had been pretending to be a perfect, elegant wife, was forced to leave her wealthy family. My brother-in-law attempted to have a discussion, but Sarah, who refused to acknowledge her faults and was very angry, was served with divorce papers. Now that the embezzlement has been revealed, she won't be able to get any compensation, and she has nothing left. My brother-in-law will keep the custody of their son, and with the help of my father-in-law and mother-in-law, he will maintain their normal life. Sarah, who always put herself first, would take her anger out on her son when things didn't go her way. But the young boy nodded firmly at his father and grandparents' words of, It'll be okay. The desire to send him to a private elementary school was Sarah's wish, but he apparently disliked being forced to study. These days, he's freely playing with our daughter. Of course, my husband and I intend to help in any way we can. On a leisurely day spent together at my in-laws' house, my mother-in-law approached me and said, "I'm really sorry for making you uncomfortable for so long. We should have noticed sooner." "No, not at all. I wasn't really bothered at first." "If you ever need anything in the future, don't hesitate to tell us." "Yes." As I said that, I remembered my mother-in-law's words. What's important is people and hearts. Maybe because I was staring at her, my mother-in-law looked at me with a puzzled expression. "Haha, it's nothing. I was just thinking how cool you are." "Well, thank you. But the cool one is you, being able to create such beautiful gardens. Maybe I should ask you to help with ours next time. I want to replant the flower bed." "Oh, absolutely. I would love to do it, even if it's not for work. Just let me know whenever." "You should charge her. Mom can be quite demanding." My husband chimed in with a playful comment, and we all laughed together. Value people, cherish hearts. I'll make sure to remember that. I hope to spend more time laughing with my precious family in the future.
I pulled into the driveway, my mind still buzzing from a hectic day of parent-teacher conferences. As I fumbled for my house keys, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked next to Lucas's SUV. Strange. My husband hadn't mentioned we'd be having company. The moment I stepped inside, I knew something was off. The air felt thick with tension, and hushed voices drifted from the kitchen. I rounded the corner, my heart skipping a beat when I saw Emily, my sister-in-law, perched on a bar stool at our kitchen island. "Sarah!" Lucas exclaimed, his voice unnaturally high. "You're home early." I glanced at the clock on the microwave. "It's 6:30, same as always." My eyes darted between Lucas and Emily, taking in their guilty expressions. "What's going on?" Emily slid off the stool, smoothing her designer jeans. "Hey, sis, surprise!" Her attempt at cheerfulness fell flat. "Emily's going through a rough patch," Lucas explained, not quite meeting my eyes. "Her marriage, well, it's over." I blinked, processing this information. "I'm sorry to hear that, Emily. But why are you here?" Lucas cleared his throat. "I told her she could stay with us for a while, just until she gets back on her feet." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "You what?" I turned to Emily. "Where are your things?" She gestured vaguely upstairs. "Guest room. Lucas helped me move in this afternoon." I gripped the edge of the counter, steadying myself. "And when exactly were you planning to tell me about this, Lucas?" He had the decency to look ashamed. "I was going to tell you tonight. I didn't want to bother you at work." "Bother me?" I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. "You invited your sister to live with us without even asking me, and you didn't want to bother me?" Emily stepped forward, her perfectly manicured hand reaching out. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I know this is a shock, but I didn't have anywhere else to go." I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions swirling inside me. "Emily, can you give us a minute? I need to talk to my husband, alone." She nodded, casting a glance at Lucas before retreating upstairs. The moment we heard the guest room door close, I rounded on Lucas. "What were you thinking?" I hissed. "We can't just take in a house guest indefinitely, especially not your sister." Lucas ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I'd seen countless times in our 15 years of marriage. "She's family, Sarah." "What was I supposed to do, turn her away?" "You were supposed to talk to me first," I countered. "We're supposed to be partners, remember?" He sighed, leaning against the counter. "You're right, I should have discussed it with you. But Emily was desperate, and I couldn't just—" A muffled thud from upstairs cut him off. We both looked up, then back at each other. Something in Lucas's expression made my stomach churn. "There's more, isn't there?" I asked, dreading the answer. Lucas nodded slowly. "Emily's not just going through a divorce. She's in some financial trouble. Serious trouble." I closed my eyes, feeling the beginnings of a headache. "How serious?" "She might lose everything," Lucas admitted. "The house, her car, everything." I opened my eyes, studying my husband's face. There was something there, something he wasn't telling me. But before I could press further, Emily appeared in the doorway, her eyes red-rimmed. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I'll go. I never meant to cause problems between you two." Lucas moved toward her, his hand outstretched. No, Emily, you don't have to. I watched as their fingers brushed, saw the look that passed between them. In that moment, I knew. This wasn't just about helping family. This was something much, much worse. My world tilted on its axis as the realization hit me. My husband and my sister-in-law. How long had this been going on, and what was I going to do now? I barely slept that night, tossing and turning as my mind raced with questions. By morning, I was exhausted and raw, but determined to get answers. I found Lucas in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Lucas nodded, his eyes bloodshot. "I know. Sarah, I'm so sorry about yesterday. I should have—" I held up a hand, cutting him off. "I don't want apologies. I want the truth. All of it." He sighed, shoulders slumping. "Emily's not just broke, she's in debt. Big time. Her ex-husband left her with nothing but a mountain of bills." "And that's our problem because—" I asked, fighting to keep my tone even. "She's family," Lucas insisted. "We can't just abandon her." I leaned against the counter, studying my husband's face. "There's more to it than that, isn't there? I saw the way you looked at her yesterday." Lucas flinched, guilt flashing across his features. "It's not what you think. Emily and we've always been close, but I swear, nothing's happened between us." "Yet," I added, the word bitter on my tongue. Before Lucas could respond, Emily appeared in the doorway, looking far too put together for someone supposedly in crisis. "Good morning," she chirped, her smile faltering as she sensed the tension. I turned to face her, my patience wearing thin. "Emily, we need to talk about your living situation." Her eyes widened, darting to Lucas. "Oh, I thought—" "Lucas said it was okay for me to stay." "Lucas doesn't make unilateral decisions for this household," I said firmly. "How long exactly are you planning to impose on us?" Emily's facade cracked, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I know this is an inconvenience. I didn't know where else to go." I felt a twinge of sympathy, quickly squashed by suspicion. "And of all the people you know, my husband was your only option?" "Sarah," Lucas warned, but I ignored him. Emily wiped at her eyes, her voice trembling. "Lucas has always been there for me. He understands me in a way no one else does." The implication hung heavy in the air. I turned to Lucas, searching his face for any sign of denial. Finding none, I felt something inside me harden. "I think it's time you left, Emily," I said, my voice cold. "Today." Emily's tears dried up instantly, her expression shifting to one of determination. "No," she said, moving to stand beside Lucas. "I'm not going anywhere." I blinked, taken aback by her sudden change in demeanor. "Excuse me?" She lifted her chin defiantly. "You heard me. Lucas invited me to stay, and I'm staying. You can't kick me out of my brother's house." I looked to Lucas, expecting him to back me up, but he remained silent, his gaze fixed on the floor. The betrayal stung like a physical blow. "Is that how you feel, Lucas?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He finally met my eyes, his expression pained. "Sarah, please, we can work this out. Emily needs our help, and You what?" I pressed, anger rising in my chest. "You care more about her needs than our marriage?" Emily stepped forward, her hand brushing Lucas's arm. The casual intimacy of the gesture made my stomach churn. "Face it, Sarah," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Lucas and I have a connection you could never understand. It's time to accept that and move on." I stared at her, shock giving way to a cold, clear rage. In that moment, I saw Emily for who she truly was. Not a desperate sister-in-law in need, but a manipulative snake who had slithered her way into my home and my marriage. I turned to Lucas, my decision made. If she stays, I go. It's that simple. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched emotions play across Lucas's face. Guilt, confusion, and something that looked terrifyingly like relief. When he finally spoke, his words shattered what was left of my world. Maybe that would be for the best. As Emily's triumphant smile bloomed behind him, I realized with sickening clarity that this was far from over. The battle for my marriage and my dignity had only just begun. I spent the next few days in a daze, going through the motions at work while my personal life crumbled around me. The house felt like a war zone, with Emily's presence a constant reminder of my failing marriage. I'd taken to sleeping in the guest room, unable to bear lying next to Lucas, knowing his heart was elsewhere. One evening I came home to find Emily alone in the living room, flipping through a magazine as if she owned the place. My blood boiled at the sight. "Where's Lucas?" I asked, my voice clipped. Emily looked up, a smirk playing at her lips. "Working late. Again." She set the magazine aside, fixing me with a pitying look. "You know, Sarah, we should talk." I crossed my arms, bracing myself. "About what?" "Lucas," she said simply. "He's been different lately, distant. Haven't you noticed?" Of course I'd noticed. The man I'd married seemed to be slipping away, replaced by a stranger who looked at Emily with longing in his eyes. But I wasn't about to admit that to her. "My marriage is none of your business," I snapped. Emily sighed, playing the role of concerned sister-in-law to perfection. "I'm just worried about him. About both of you. Lucas needs someone who understands him, who can give him what he needs." The implication hung heavy in the air. I felt my nails digging into my palms as I fought to keep my composure. "And I suppose you think that's you?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. Emily stood, moving closer. "I'm not trying to hurt you, Sarah, but you have to face facts. Lucas and I, we have a connection, a history. Maybe it's time to stop fighting the inevitable." Something inside me snapped. Before I knew what I was doing, my hand connected with Emily's cheek. The sharp crack echoing through the room. Emily stumbled back, shock written across her face. You hit me." "Get out," I seethed, trembling with rage. "Get out of my house now." The front door opened and Lucas walked in, freezing at the scene before him. "What the hell is going on?" Emily burst into tears, running to Lucas and burying her face in his chest. "She hit me. I was just trying to talk to her, and she attacked me." Lucas's arms went around Emily instinctively, and I felt my heart shatter all over again. He looked at me, his expression a mix of disappointment and anger. "Sarah, how could you?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. I stared at them, the picture of betrayal complete. "How could I? How could you, Lucas? How long has this been going on? How long have you been planning to leave me for her?" Lucas's eyes widened, guilt flashing across his face before he schooled his features. "It's not like that. Emily needs us. I'm just trying to help her." "By destroying our marriage?" I countered, my voice breaking. Emily pulled away from Lucas, wiping her crocodile tears. "I told you, Sarah, you're only pushing him away. Lucas deserves someone who truly understands him." I watched as Lucas's hand found Emily's, their fingers intertwining. The gesture, so small yet so intimate, was the final nail in the coffin of my marriage. "I want a divorce," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Lucas flinched, but I saw the relief in his eyes. "Sarah, please. We can work this out. We just need time." "Time for what?" I interrupted. "Time for you to keep lying to me? Time for her to completely take my place?" I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping me. "No, I'm done. You two deserve each other." I turned and walked out of the room, my head held high despite the tears threatening to fall. As I climbed the stairs, I heard Emily's voice, low and triumphant. "It's for the best, Lucas. Now we can finally be together." In that moment, I knew. This wasn't just about saving my marriage anymore. This was war, and I was going to fight with everything I had. The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose. If Lucas wanted a divorce, I'd make sure I was prepared. While he was at work, I decided to search his home office for any financial documents we might need. As I rifled through his desk drawers, my hand brushed against a thick manila envelope. My heart stopped when I pulled it out and saw the words "divorce papers" scrawled across the top in Lucas's handwriting. With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. The papers inside were pristine, unmarked, except for Lucas's signature on the last page. He'd already signed them. He was just waiting to serve me. I sank into his chair, my world spinning. How long had he been planning this? How long had I been living a lie? A noise from the doorway startled me. I looked up to see Emily leaning against the frame, a triumphant smirk on her face. Well, she said, sauntering into the room. "Looks like the cat's out of the bag." I clutched the papers to my chest. "You knew about this?" Emily laughed, the sound grating on my nerves. "Of course I knew. Who do you think helped Lucas draft them?" The betrayal cut deep, but I refused to let her see me cry. "Why?" I demanded. "Why are you doing this to me?" Her smile faded, replaced by a look of cold determination. "Because I deserve this, Sarah. I deserve Lucas, this house, this life, and you. You're just in the way." Before I could respond, we heard the front door open. Lucas's voice called out, "I'm home early. Sarah? Emily?" Emily's eyes glittered with malice. Showtime, she whispered, then raised her voice. We're in your office, Lucas. Sarah's found something interesting. Lucas appeared in the doorway, his face paling when he saw the papers in my hands. Sarah, I can explain. Explain what? I interrupted, my voice surprisingly steady. How you've been planning to divorce me behind my back? How you've been conspiring with your sister to kick me out of my own home? Lucas had the decency to look ashamed, but Emily just rolled her eyes. Oh, please, don't act so surprised. You must have known this was coming. I stood facing them both. Actually, I didn't. I thought we had a marriage worth fighting for. I guess I was wrong. Lucas stepped forward, his hand outstretched. Sarah, please, it's not what you think. I thought it would be easier this way. Easier? I laughed bitterly. For who? You and your mistress here? Emily bristled. Watch it, Sarah. Remember whose house you're in. Something inside me snapped. My house, I snarled. My marriage, my life, and I'll be damned if I let you two take it from me without a fight. Lucas's expression hardened. There's nothing to fight for, Sarah. It's over. Just sign the papers and we can all move on. I looked between them, my husband of 15 years and the woman who'd stolen him away. In that moment I made a decision. You want me to sign? I asked, my voice dangerously low. Fine. I'll sign, but not before I get what's rightfully mine. I turned and strode out of the office, the divorce papers clutched in my hand. Behind me I heard Emily's triumphant laugh and Lucas's worried voice asking what I meant. As I climbed the stairs to pack my things, a plan began to form in my mind. They thought they'd won, but they had no idea what I was capable of. This wasn't just about saving my marriage anymore. This was about justice, retribution, and making sure Emily and Lucas paid for every ounce of pain they'd caused me. The war had begun, and I intended to emerge victorious. I spent the next few days in a haze of anger and determination, meticulously planning my next move. I'd contacted a divorce lawyer, gathered financial documents, and started looking for a new place to live. But I wasn't about to let Lucas and Emily off easy. On a rainy Tuesday morning, I sat at the kitchen table, divorce papers spread out before me. My hand hovered over the signature line, pen poised. This was it. The moment that would change everything. The front door opened, and Lucas walked in, shaking water from his umbrella. He froze when he saw me. Sarah, he said cautiously. What are you doing? I looked up, meeting his gaze steadily. What does it look like? I'm giving you what you want. His eyes widened as he realized what I meant. You're signing the papers? I nodded, turning back to the documents. With a deep breath, I signed my name on each marked line, feeling a piece of my heart break with every stroke of the pen. Lucas approached slowly, as if afraid I might lash out. I didn't think you'd do it so quickly. I laughed bitterly. What did you expect, Lucas? That I'd beg you to stay? Fight for a man who clearly doesn't want me? He had the decency to look ashamed. Sarah, I never meant to hurt you. It's just... Emily and I. Save it, I interrupted, standing up. I don't want to hear your excuses, but there's something you should know. I pulled out another set of papers from my bag, sliding them across the table. Lucas picked them up, his brow furrowing as he read. What is this? He asked, confusion evident in his voice. That, I said, a hint of triumph in my tone, is a petition to sell the house. Our house. The one you so generously offered to your sister. Lucas's face paled. You can't do this. Emily needs to find her own place to live, I snapped. This house is half mine, and I'm not about to let you two play happy families in the home we built together. Just then, Emily waltzed in, her smug smile faltering when she saw the tension in the room. What's going on? I turned to her, a cold smile on my face. Oh, just finalizing some details of the divorce. By the way, you might want to start house hunting. This place will be on the market by the end of the week. Emily's eyes widened in panic. She turned to Lucas. You can't let her do this. Where will I go? Lucas looked between us, clearly torn. Sarah, please, can't we discuss this? I shook my head, gathering up the papers. There's nothing to discuss. The divorce is final, and the house will be sold. You two can figure out your living arrangements on your own. As I moved to leave, Emily grabbed my arm. You vindictive bitch, she hissed. You won't get away with this. I yanked my arm free, fixing her with a steely glare. Watch me. With that, I walked out of the kitchen, head held high. As I reached the front door, I heard Lucas call out, Sarah, wait, where will you go? I paused, hand on the doorknob. Without turning around, I replied, Anywhere but here. As I stepped out into the rain, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The pain was still there, raw and throbbing, but alongside it was something new. Hope, determination, a fierce desire to reclaim my life and build something better. I got into my car, taking one last look at the house that had been my home for so many years. It was time to say goodbye to the old Sarah, the one who had let herself be betrayed and pushed aside. From now on, I was going to put myself first. As I drove away, I made a silent vow. This wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would be the author of my own happiness. The bustling streets of Chicago were a far cry from the quiet suburbs I'd left behind. 3 months had passed since I'd signed those divorce papers, and I was determined to make a fresh start. I'd found a small apartment and started building a clientele as a private tutor, drawing on my years of teaching experience. On a crisp autumn morning, I sat in a quaint coffee shop, waiting for my first student of the day. As I sipped my latte, my phone buzzed with a text from Lucas. "Sarah, we need to talk. It's about the house." My stomach churned. I'd been avoiding his calls, letting my lawyer handle the details of the sale, but I knew I couldn't run forever. "What about it?" I typed back, my fingers trembling slightly. His response came quickly. "Emily's pregnant. We can't move now. Please reconsider selling." The words hit me like a physical blow. Pregnant. Emily was pregnant with Lucas's child. The life I'd once dreamed of having with him was now hers. I barely noticed when my student, a bright-eyed teenager named Lily, slid into the seat across from me. "Mrs. Johnson, are you okay?" she asked, concern etched on her young face. I forced a smile, pushing down the turmoil inside me. "I'm fine, Lily. Let's get started on those algebra equations, shall we?" As we worked through the problems, my mind raced. I'd come so far, built a new life for myself, but hearing about Emily's pregnancy had reopened wounds I thought had healed. After Lily left, I found myself wandering the streets, lost in thought. My phone rang. It was my lawyer. "Sarah, I've got some news about the house sale," he said, his voice grave. "There's been a complication." My heart sank. "What kind of complication?" "Lucas is contesting the sale. He's claiming you signed the divorce papers under duress and that the house should remain in his possession." I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. Everything I'd worked for, the clean break I'd fought so hard to achieve, was suddenly in jeopardy. "He can't do that," I said, my voice rising. "We both signed those papers willingly." "I know, Sarah, but he's got a good lawyer, and with Emily's pregnancy, they're painting a sympathetic picture. We need to prepare for a fight." As I hung up, I noticed I'd wandered into a small park. I sank onto a bench, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. Just when I thought I was moving forward, the past was dragging me back. A group of children ran by, their laughter echoing through the park. I watched them, remembering the family I'd once hoped to have with Lucas. Now he was starting that family with Emily. Anger bubbled up inside me, replacing the initial shock. How dare they try to take away the one thing I had left? The house sale was my ticket to a truly fresh start, a way to cut all ties with my old life. I pulled out my phone, my fingers flying over the keys as I typed a message to Lucas. "You want to fight? You've got one. I won't let you and Emily take anything else from me." As I hit send, a strange calm washed over me. This was it, the final battle. Everything I'd been through, every tear I'd shed, and every sleepless night had led to this moment. I stood up, squaring my shoulders. I'd rebuilt my life once. I could do it again. But this time, I wouldn't just survive. I would thrive. As I walked out of the park, my resolve hardened. Lucas and Emily thought they could bully me into submission, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. The old Sarah might have backed down, might have given in to keep the peace, but not anymore. This time, I was ready to fight with everything I had. The weeks flew by in a whirlwind of tutoring sessions and legal meetings. My days were filled with helping students unlock their potential, while my nights were consumed by strategizing with my lawyer. The fight for the house had become more than just a battle over property. It was a fight for my dignity, my future. One crisp autumn evening, I stood before a small gathering at the local community center. I'd been invited to speak about adult education and second chances. As I looked out at the sea of faces, many of them women my age or older, I felt a surge of strength. "Life doesn't always go as planned," I began, my voice steady. Sometimes the path we thought we'd follow crumbles beneath our feet. But that doesn't mean we're lost. It means we have the opportunity to forge a new path. As I spoke, I saw heads nodding, eyes glistening with unshed tears. These women understood loss, betrayal, the struggle to reinvent oneself. I was one of them now. After the talk, a woman approached me, her gray hair neatly coiffed. "Thank you," she said, clasping my hand. "Your words, they gave me hope. I've been struggling since my divorce, but hearing your story makes me believe I can start over, too." Her words warmed my heart, but before I could respond, my phone buzzed insistently. It was my lawyer. "Sarah, we've got a problem," he said, his voice tense. "Lucas's lawyer has filed a motion claiming you abandoned the property. They're trying to void the sale agreement entirely." My blood ran cold. "That's ridiculous. I left because he was having an affair with my sister-in-law." "I know, Sarah, but they're playing dirty. We need to counter this fast." As I hung up, I felt the walls closing in. Everything I'd worked for, the new life I'd built, was teetering on the brink of collapse. If Lucas won, I'd lose not just the house, but the financial cushion I needed to truly start over. I looked up to see the gray-haired woman watching me, concern etched on her face. "Are you all right, dear?" In that moment, something inside me snapped. I was tired of being the victim, tired of Lucas and Emily controlling my life from afar. "No," I said, my voice stronger than I felt, "but I will be." I spent the next few days in a frenzy of activity. I gathered every scrap of evidence I could find, emails, text messages, anything that proved Lucas and Emily's affair. I reached out to old friends and colleagues, asking for character references. On the day of the court hearing, I stood outside the courthouse, my heart pounding. This was it, the moment that would decide my future. As I climbed the steps, I saw them. Lucas and Emily hand in hand, her pregnancy now visible. The sight of them looking so smug and confident made my blood boil. Emily caught my eye, a triumphant smirk playing on her lips. "Ready to lose, Sarah?" she called out. I felt a surge of rage, so powerful it nearly took my breath away. But then I remembered the women at the community center, their faces full of hope and admiration. I thought of my students, working so hard to better themselves. I thought of the new Sarah I'd become, stronger, more resilient, unwilling to back down. I met Emily's gaze, my chin held high. "I've already won," I said, my voice steady, "because unlike you, I don't need to steal someone else's life to be happy." With that, I turned and walked into the courthouse, my head held high. Whatever happened in that courtroom, I knew one thing for certain. I was done being a victim. From this moment on, I was the author of my own story. And no one, not Lucas, not Emily, could take that away from me. As the courtroom doors loomed before me, I took a deep breath. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, my future. And I was ready to fight with everything I had. 2 years had passed since the courtroom battle. I'd won the right to sell the house, using the proceeds to build a new life in Chicago. My tutoring business had flourished, and I'd even started a support group for women rebuilding their lives after divorce. I thought I'd left my old life behind for good. But fate had other plans. I found myself back in my hometown, visiting my ailing mother. As I walked down Main Street, memories flooding back with each step, I spotted a familiar face through a diner window. Lucas. My heart stuttered. He was waiting tables, looking haggard and worn. A far cry from the successful businessman he'd once been. Before I could duck away, his eyes met mine. Recognition flashed across his face, followed by a mix of shame and regret. Against my better judgment, I entered the diner. The bell above the door chimed, announcing my arrival. Lucas approached, coffee pot in hand, his steps hesitant. "Sarah," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know you were in town." I nodded, taking a seat at the counter. "Just visiting, Mom. How are you, Lucas?" He poured me a cup of coffee, his hands trembling slightly. "I've been better," he admitted. "Emily, she left, took the baby and moved back east." I felt a twinge of sympathy, quickly replaced by a sense of vindication. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, surprised to find I meant it. Lucas's eyes filled with tears. "I made a terrible mistake, Sarah. I threw away the best thing in my life for nothing." I sipped my coffee, letting his words hang in the air. The old Sarah might have comforted him, might have even considered taking him back. But I wasn't that woman anymore. "We all make choices, Lucas," I said finally. "We have to live with the consequences." He nodded, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. You look good, Sarah. Happy. I smiled, thinking of my new life, my new friends, the women I'd helped. I am happy. It wasn't easy, but I've built a life I'm proud of. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Lily, my first Chicago student, now heading off to college. Got accepted to Northwestern. Couldn't have done it without you, Mrs. J. Thank you for everything. Warmth spread through my chest as I showed Lucas the message. This is why I do what I do, I said. Helping others rebuild their lives. It's given me purpose. Lucas's face crumpled. I'm so sorry, Sarah, for everything. I wish I could go back and change it all. I stood, leaving money for the coffee on the counter. We can't change the past, Lucas, but we can learn from it. As I turned to leave, Lucas called out, Do you think, could you ever forgive me? I paused at the door, considering his question. The anger and hurt I'd carried for so long had faded, replaced by something else. Not love, not anymore, but understanding. We were both flawed, both human. I forgave you a long time ago, Lucas, I said softly. It was the only way I could move on. With that, I walked out of the diner and into the bright sunlight. As I made my way down the familiar streets of my hometown, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. The woman who had left this town broken and betrayed was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, wiser, more compassionate. I thought of the life I'd built in Chicago, the students I'd helped, the women in my support group who'd become like sisters. I thought of Lily, heading off to college, her future bright with possibility. And I thought of Lucas, a cautionary tale of what happens when you take love for granted. My phone buzzed again, another text, this time from the community center in Chicago. They wanted me to lead a workshop on rebuilding after divorce. I smiled, typing out a quick acceptance. As I reached my mother's house, I paused on the porch, looking back at the town that had shaped me. This place held memories both bitter and sweet, but it no longer defined me. My life, my true home, was waiting for me in Chicago. I took a deep breath, feeling the last vestiges of my old life fall away. The future stretched out before me, full of promise and possibility. For the first time in years, I felt truly, completely free. With a smile on my face and lightness in my heart, I opened the door to greet my mother. It was time to share my story of triumph, of resilience, of a woman who had lost everything only to find herself. And in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that the best was yet to come.
I was sitting at my desk, surrounded by blueprints and zoning regulations, when the email notification popped up. It was a routine check of our joint account, something I did every month to ensure everything was in order. But this time, something was off. A series of transactions, all substantial, were listed under Nate's name. They were not the usual grocery or utility payments. Instead, they were payments to a name I didn't recognize, and they had been going on for months. My name is Alara, and I'm an urban planner. I love my job, creating spaces that bring people together. But right now, all I could feel was a knot tightening in my stomach. Nate and I had always been open about our finances, or so I thought. This discovery felt like a crack in the foundation of my life, threatening to crumble everything I'd worked so hard to build. I tried to shake off the unease that settled over me, telling myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was a business expense or a surprise he was planning. But the amounts were too large and too frequent to be anything innocent. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, the numbers blurring together as my mind raced. "Hey, Alara, you okay?" Tessa's voice pulled me back to reality. She stood at my office door, her usual smile replaced with concern. "Yeah, just a bit distracted," I replied, trying to sound casual. But Tessa knew me too well to be fooled. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "Distracted by what?" she pressed, settling into the chair across from me. I hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. But Tessa had been my rock through so many storms. "It's Nate. I found some transactions on our account. They don't make sense." Her eyebrows shot up. "Have you talked to him about it?" "Not yet. I don't want to jump to conclusions," I said, though even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were a flimsy excuse. Tessa nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "Well, maybe it's nothing. But if it's bothering you, you should ask him." I nodded, though the idea of confronting Nate filled me with a sense of dread. What if it was something serious? What if it was the beginning of an unraveling I wasn't prepared to face? Later that evening, I sat across from Nate at the dinner table, the usual comfort of our shared meal tainted by the questions swirling in my mind. He was talking about his day, something about a project deadline, but I barely heard him. I was too focused on the way he avoided eye contact, the slight tension in his shoulders. "Nate," I interrupted, my voice firmer than I felt. "I noticed some transactions on our account. They're pretty significant." He paused, fork halfway to his mouth. "Oh, those. Yeah, I meant to tell you. It's just some investments I've been making." Investments. The word hung between us, heavy and unsatisfying. "Investments," I echoed, trying to keep my tone even. He nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just trying to build something for our future." I wanted to believe him desperately. But there was something in his eyes, a flicker of something that made my skin prickle with unease. "Can you show me the details? I'd love to know more about it." He hesitated just for a moment, but it was enough. "Sure, I'll show you later. It's all pretty boring stuff." I forced a smile, though my mind was screaming. Later. It was always later. And I couldn't shake the feeling that later would never come. That night, as I lay in bed beside him, listening to his steady breathing, I knew I couldn't let it go. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust, and the gnawing fear that there was more beneath the surface than I dared to imagine. I decided then that I needed to know the truth, no matter the cost. As I drifted into a restless sleep, I resolved to dig deeper, to uncover whatever secrets Nate was hiding. Because if I didn't, I feared I might lose everything I held dear. The next morning, I woke with a sense of determination. I would find out what was going on, and I wouldn't stop until I had answers. Little did I know this was just the beginning of a journey that would change everything I thought I knew about my life and the man I loved. The morning after my discovery, I found myself at Lorraine's doorstep, clutching a tray of muffins as a peace offering. Lorraine had always been warm, treating me like her own daughter. But lately she'd been distant, her calls less frequent, her hugs less tight. I needed to know if she had noticed anything strange about Nate, too. Lorraine opened the door, surprise flickering across her face before she pulled me into a hug. It was warm, but there was a hesitation I couldn't ignore. "Alara, what a lovely surprise," she said, ushering me inside. The house smelled of lavender and fresh coffee, a comforting mix that reminded me of simpler times. We settled in her cozy kitchen, and I watched her pour coffee into 2 mismatched mugs. "How are things with you and Nate?" she asked, her tone casual but her eyes sharp. I hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. "We're working through some things," I said, choosing my words carefully. "Have you noticed anything different about him lately?" Lorraine's hand paused mid-pour, a slight tremor that spoke volumes. "He's been busy, I suppose. The work can be demanding." There it was again, that hint of something unsaid. "He's been making some big financial decisions," I said, trying to gauge her reaction. She nodded too quickly. "Nate's always been ambitious. I'm sure he has a plan." A plan. I wanted to believe that, but the doubt gnawed at me. "I just wish he'd talk to me about it," I admitted, my voice softer. Lorraine reached across the table, her hand warm on mine. "Men can be foolish sometimes, Alara. But Nate loves you. I'm sure he'll come around." I wanted to believe her, but the uncertainty lingered. As I left her house, I couldn't shake the feeling that Lorraine knew more than she was letting on. Her words were reassuring, but the tension in her eyes told a different story. Back at home, I found Nate in his office, his brow furrowed in concentration as he typed away. I watched him for a moment, trying to reconcile the man I loved with the stranger he seemed to be becoming. "Nate!" I called softly, stepping into the room. He looked up, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Hey, everything okay?" I nodded, though my heart was pounding. "I went to see your mom today." His fingers paused over the keyboard, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. "Oh? How is she?" "She's good. We talked about you." I watched him carefully, hoping for a sign, anything that would make sense of the knots in my stomach. Nate leaned back in his chair, his expression guarded. "And she said you've been busy. I wish you'd talk to me about what's going on." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Alara, I'm trying to handle it. I don't want to worry you." "But I am worried," I said, my voice firmer than before. "I'm your wife, Nate. We're supposed to handle things together." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment I thought I saw a crack in his defenses. But just as quickly it was gone. "I promise I'll explain everything soon." That promise hung in the air, fragile and unconvincing. I nodded, though my mind was already racing ahead, plotting my next move. If Nate wouldn't tell me the truth, I'd have to find it myself. Later that night, I called Tessa, my heart pounding as I filled her in on my conversation with Lorraine and Nate's evasiveness. "This doesn't sound good, Alara," she said, her voice crackling over the line. "What's your next step?" "I need to dig deeper," I said, determination hardening my resolve. "I can't keep living in this uncertainty." "Do you want me to help?" Tessa offered, her loyalty unwavering. I hesitated, knowing the risk but needing her support. "Yes. I could use all the help I can get." As we hung up, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever Nate was hiding, I was going to find out. And with Tessa by my side, I knew I wasn't alone in this fight. The next morning, I woke with a plan. I would start by looking into Nate's recent activities, checking his emails and phone records, anything that might give me a clue. It was a step I never thought I'd have to take, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Little did I know, the truth I was about to uncover would be more shocking than I could have ever imagined, setting me on a path that would test every ounce of strength I had. I sat at my computer, the room dimly lit by the glow of the screen. My heart pounded as I navigated through Nate's email account, the one he never mentioned. It had taken a few guesses and a lot of nerve to crack his password, but here I was, staring at a digital Pandora's box. The first few emails were mundane, work updates, newsletters, spam. But then I found them. A thread of messages with a woman named Emily. My breath caught as I clicked on one, my eyes scanning the words that confirmed my worst fears. "Can't wait to see you this weekend. Miss you so much," read one email, signed with a heart emoji. My stomach twisted as I read on, each message a dagger, revealing a relationship that was far more than just friendship. Emily. I'd never heard of her, but she seemed to know Nate intimately. The emails spoke of shared weekends, whispered secrets, plans for a future that didn't include me. My hands shook as I closed the laptop, the betrayal cutting deeper than I'd imagined. I needed air, space to think. I grabbed my coat and headed out, the cool evening air doing little to calm the storm inside me. I found myself walking to Tessa's apartment, my feet moving on autopilot. She opened the door, her face immediately falling as she saw mine. "Alara, what happened?" she asked, pulling me inside. "I found his emails," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "He's been seeing someone else." Tessa's eyes widened in shock, but she quickly pulled me into a hug. "Oh, Alara, I'm so sorry." We sat on her couch, the reality of my situation settling in like a heavy fog. "I don't know what to do," I admitted, my voice cracking. "You don't have to decide anything right now," Tessa said gently. "But you need to confront him." I nodded, though the thought of facing Nate filled me with dread. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, the ground crumbling beneath me. "I don't even know who he is anymore." Tessa squeezed my hand. "You're strong, Alara. You'll get through this." Her words were a balm, but the path ahead felt impossibly daunting. I stayed with her that night, unable to face Nate, unable to pretend everything was normal. The next day, I returned home, my mind made up. I needed answers, and I needed them now. Nate was in the kitchen, sipping coffee, his demeanor casual, as if our world wasn't about to implode. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. He looked up, a hint of wariness in his eyes. "Sure, what's up?" I took a deep breath, the words heavy on my tongue. "Who is Emily?" His expression shifted, a flicker of panic quickly masked by feigned confusion. "Emily? What are you talking about?" "I saw the emails, Nate. All of them," I said, my voice rising with each word. "You've been lying to me." He set his mug down, his facade crumbling. "Alara, I can explain." "Explain what?" "That you're married to someone else? That you've been living a double life?" The words tumbled out, raw and accusatory. Nate's shoulders slumped, the fight leaving him. "It's complicated." Complicated. The word felt like a slap. "You think?" I snapped, anger finally breaking through the numbness. "How long has this been going on?" He hesitated, and in that moment I knew the truth was worse than I'd imagined. "A few years," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "Years." My world tilted, the betrayal cutting deeper than any wound. "Why, Nate? Why would you do this?" "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said, his voice desperate. "I was in a bad place, and I cut him off, unable to hear more excuses. You've been lying to me, to your family. How could you? He reached for me, but I stepped back, the distance between us suddenly insurmountable. I'm sorry, Alara. I never wanted to hurt you. The apology felt hollow, a bandage on a gaping wound. I need time, I said, my voice breaking. I can't do this right now. I turned and walked away, the weight of his betrayal pressing down on me. As I left the house, I realized that justice and revenge were no longer abstract concepts. They were my reality, and I was determined to find a way to reclaim my life from the wreckage Nate had left behind. I returned to work, trying to bury myself in the comforting chaos of urban planning. But the betrayal lingered like a shadow, seeping into every corner of my mind. My colleagues noticed my distraction, but I brushed off their concern with forced smiles and half-hearted reassurances. The project I was working on, a new community park, had been my passion for months. It was supposed to be a place of connection and joy, a symbol of hope. But now it felt like just another task on a never-ending list, overshadowed by the turmoil in my personal life. One afternoon, as I was reviewing plans, my phone buzzed. It was Lorraine. Her voice was strained, a hint of something urgent beneath her usual calm. "Alara, can we meet?" she asked, skipping the pleasantries. "Of course," I replied, sensing the weight in her words. "Is everything okay?" She hesitated, and that pause spoke volumes. "I'll explain when we meet. Can you come over later?" I agreed, my curiosity piqued and my anxiety rising. What could be so important that she couldn't tell me over the phone? When I arrived at Lorraine's, she greeted me with a tight smile. We settled in her living room, the air thick with unspoken words. "I've been doing some thinking," she began, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "About Nate and everything that's happened." I nodded, urging her to continue. "And I've been supporting him financially," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "He told me it was for you, for your career." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. "For me?" I echoed, disbelief coloring my voice. She nodded, her eyes filled with regret. "I thought I was helping, but now? I'm not so sure." The room seemed to close in around me, the implications of her revelation settling heavily on my shoulders. Nate had not only betrayed me, but had used Lorraine's generosity to cover his tracks. "I'm so sorry, Alara," Lorraine said, her voice breaking. "I didn't know." I reached out, squeezing her hand. "It's not your fault. He's been lying to both of us." We sat in silence, the weight of our shared betrayal hanging between us. It was a turning point, a moment that forced me to reevaluate everything I thought I knew about Nate and our marriage. "I need to confront him," I said finally, determination hardening my resolve. "I can't let this continue." Lorraine nodded, her expression fierce. "And I'll be right there with you. We deserve answers." As I left her house, a plan began to form. I would gather more evidence, confront Nate with the truth, and demand accountability. It was time to take control of my life, to stop being the victim of his deceit. The following days were a blur of activity. I spent hours combing through bank statements, emails, anything that could give me more insight into Nate's double life. Meanwhile, Tessa helped me piece together a timeline, her support unwavering. But just as I felt I was gaining ground, an unexpected twist shattered my fragile sense of control. I received a call from Harold Mercer, a name I recognized from Nate's emails. He was Emily's father. "Alara, I'm not sure how to say this," Harold began, his voice filled with an unfamiliar tension. "But I think there's something you need to know about Nate." My heart pounded as I listened, each word confirming my worst fears. Nate had married Emily under false pretenses, using Lorraine's money to fund a life I knew nothing about. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Because Emily passed away recently," Harold said, grief threading through his words. "And I found some documents that didn't add up. Nate's been lying to us too." The revelation hit me like a tidal wave, the magnitude of Nate's betrayal more profound than I'd imagined. I thanked Harold, promising to keep in touch, though my mind was already spinning with the implications. This new information shifted everything. Nate's deceit was deeper and more calculated than I'd realized, affecting not just me but another family. The stakes were higher, the need for justice more urgent. I met with Lorraine and Tessa that evening, sharing what I'd learned. Together, we devised a plan to confront Nate, to hold him accountable for the web of lies he'd spun. As I prepared for the confrontation, I felt a shift within me. The desire for revenge was tempered by a deeper need for justice, not just for myself but for everyone Nate had hurt. It was time to face him, to demand the truth, and to reclaim my life from the chaos he'd created. The day of the funeral arrived, a somber occasion clouded by the storm of revelations and deceit. Lorraine and I had decided it was the perfect setting to confront Nate. The irony of exposing his lies at a funeral for a mother who wasn't even dead was not lost on us. We arrived together, the tension between us a shared burden. Lorraine's face was set in determination, her usual warmth replaced by a steely resolve. I felt the same fire burning within me, fueled by the need for justice and the desire to reclaim control over my life. The Mercers were there, Harold and Diana, dressed in black, their faces etched with grief. I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for them, unwitting victims of Nate's web of lies. As we entered the hall, Nate spotted us. For a moment, I saw a flicker of panic in his eyes before he masked it with a smile. He approached us, his demeanor as charming as ever, but I could see the cracks beneath the surface. "Lorraine, Alara, I'm glad you could make it," he said, his voice smooth but lacking sincerity. Lorraine didn't waste any time. "We need to talk, Nate. Now." He glanced around, the tension between us palpable. "Can it wait? This isn't the time or place." I stepped forward, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "No, Nate. It can't wait." Reluctantly, he led us to a quieter corner, away from the mourners. The moment we were out of earshot, Lorraine turned on him, her voice low and fierce. "How could you do this, Nate? To us, to them." He opened his mouth, but no excuse came. Instead, he looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Alara, I'm sorry. I never wanted it to go this far." "Sorry doesn't fix this," I said, my voice breaking. "You've lied to everyone. You've used your mother's money to fund a life I knew nothing about." Nate ran a hand through his hair, frustration etched on his face. "I was in over my head. I thought I could fix it before anyone found out." Lorraine shook her head, disappointment heavy in her gaze. "You've hurt so many people, Nate. This isn't something you can just fix." The conversation was interrupted by Harold's approach, his expression a mix of sorrow and anger. "What's going on here?" I hesitated, unsure of how to explain without causing more pain. But Lorraine stepped in, her voice gentle but firm. "Harold, there's something you need to know about Nate." As she spoke, revealing the truth of Nate's deceit, I watched Harold's face shift from confusion to disbelief. Diana joined us, her eyes wide with shock as the reality of Nate's betrayal sank in. Nate's shoulders slumped, the weight of his actions finally crashing down on him. "I never meant for any of this to happen," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Harold's response was cold, his words cutting through the air like a knife. "You've torn our family apart, Nate. How could you?" Confrontation left Nate reeling, his charm stripped away to reveal a man lost in his own lies. As he stood there, exposed and vulnerable, I realized that my desire for revenge had been replaced by a need for closure, for healing. But just as I thought the worst was over, an unexpected twist shattered any illusion of resolution. Diana turned to me, her voice trembling with a new revelation. "Alara, there's something else. Emily was pregnant when she passed." The words hung in the air, a new layer of betrayal that took my breath away. Nate had not only deceived us but had left a child without a father, a family without answers. I looked at Nate, my heart aching with a mix of anger and pity. "What have you done?" I asked, my voice raw with emotion. He couldn't meet my gaze, his silence a confirmation of his guilt. The situation had spiraled beyond anything I could have imagined, leaving me questioning everything I thought I knew about justice and revenge. As we left the hall, I felt Lorraine's hand on my shoulder, her presence a comforting anchor in the chaos. "We'll get through this, Alara," she said softly, her words a promise of solidarity. In that moment, I understood that justice wasn't just about retribution. It was about finding strength in the face of betrayal, about rebuilding from the ashes of trust. And as I walked away from the wreckage of Nate's lies, I knew I had the support I needed to face whatever came next. The aftermath of the funeral confrontation left me feeling hollow, as if the ground beneath me had vanished. The revelation of Emily's pregnancy was a blow I hadn't anticipated, a twist that made Nate's betrayal even more monstrous. How could I have been so blind to the man I thought I knew? Back at home, the silence was deafening. Nate had left, his absence a gaping void in the house we had shared. I wandered from room to room, each space filled with memories that now felt tainted. My mind was a storm of anger, hurt, and confusion, each emotion crashing into the next. I found myself in the kitchen, staring at the table where we'd shared countless meals. The weight of everything pressed down on me, and I sank into a chair, my head in my hands. How had it come to this? How had my life unraveled so completely? The doorbell rang, jolting me from my thoughts. I opened the door to find Tessa, her expression a mix of concern and determination. She stepped inside, pulling me into a hug that I didn't know I needed until that moment. "Alara, I'm here," she said simply, her presence a balm to my frayed nerves. We sat together, and I filled her in on the latest revelations. Her eyes widened with each new detail, disbelief etched on her face. "I can't believe he's done this," she said, shaking her head. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I admitted, my voice small. "I feel like I'm drowning." Tessa squeezed my hand, her grip firm and reassuring. "You're not alone, Alara. We'll figure this out together." Her words were a lifeline, but the path ahead felt impossibly daunting. As we talked, I realized that my desire for revenge had given way to a deeper need for justice. Not just for myself, but for Emily and her unborn child. But just as I thought I was beginning to find my footing, another twist sent me spiraling. My phone buzzed with a message from Lorraine, her words a fresh blow to my fragile sense of stability. "Alara, I've just received some legal papers. Nate's trying to access my accounts," the message read. I stared at the screen, disbelief turning to anger. Even now, Nate was still trying to manipulate and deceive, his desperation driving him to new lows. It was a stark reminder of just how far he'd fallen, and how far I still had to go to protect myself and those around me. I called Lorraine, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and determination. "We need to stop him, Lorraine. He can't keep getting away with this." She agreed, her voice steady despite the turmoil. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect us, Alara. We'll get through this." As I hung up, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I couldn't let Nate continue to wreak havoc on our lives. It was time to take decisive action, to ensure that he faced the consequences of his actions. The next few days were a blur of legal consultations and strategy sessions with Lorraine and Tessa. We gathered evidence, prepared statements, and fortified our defenses against Nate's attempts to further manipulate the situation. But as we worked, the weight of everything began to take its toll. I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally, the constant stress leaving me feeling frayed at the edges. Every time I thought I was making progress, another complication would arise, threatening to undo everything. One evening, as I sat alone in my living room, the enormity of it all crashed over me. I felt like I was fighting a battle I couldn't win, the odds stacked against me at every turn. The idea of justice felt like a distant dream, overshadowed by the relentless reality of Nate's deceit. In that moment, I realized I was at my lowest point. Path to reclaiming my life seemed impossibly long, the obstacles insurmountable. But even as despair threatened to overwhelm me, a small voice inside reminded me of the strength I'd found in Lorraine, Tessa, and even myself. I took a deep breath, the air filling my lungs with renewed resolve. I couldn't give up, not now. I had to keep fighting, not just for myself, but for everyone Nate had hurt. It was time to turn the tide, to reclaim my life from the chaos and find a way forward. With that thought, I rose from the couch, determination hardening my resolve. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I wouldn't let Nate's lies define me. I was stronger than this, and I would find a way to rise above it all. The day I discovered I was pregnant was a storm of emotions. I stood in the bathroom, staring at the positive test, my mind racing. The revelation was both a blessing and a burden, a new life amidst the chaos Nate had created. Forced me to reevaluate everything, to consider not just my future but that of my unborn child. I knew I had to confront Nate one last time, not just for me, but for the life growing inside me. The thought of my child being dragged into his web of deceit was unbearable. I needed to ensure that Nate faced the consequences of his actions, not just for the past, but for the future. With Lorraine and Tessa by my side, we arranged to meet Nate at a neutral location, a park we'd once loved, now a battlefield for truth. As we arrived, the air was thick with tension, the weight of what was to come pressing down on us. Nate was already there, pacing nervously, his usual confidence replaced by a palpable anxiety. As we approached, he stopped, his eyes flicking between us, searching for answers in our expressions. "Alara, what's this about?" he asked, trying to maintain a veneer of calm. I took a deep breath, the gravity of the moment settling over me. "We need to talk, Nate. About everything." His gaze shifted to Lorraine, then Tessa, a flicker of fear in his eyes. "I've already explained. I was desperate. I didn't mean for things to get out of hand. Desperate." Lorraine's voice was sharp, cutting through the air. "You used me, Nate. You lied to everyone." Nate's eyes pleaded with her, but Lorraine's expression was steely, unmoved by his charm. "I thought I could fix it," he said, his voice cracking. I stepped forward, my resolve unwavering. "You can't fix this, Nate. You've hurt too many people." He looked at me, his eyes searching mine for a hint of forgiveness. "Alara, please. I love you. I never wanted to lose you." The words hung between us, but they felt hollow, a last-ditch effort to salvage something from the wreckage. "Love isn't enough, Nate. Not when it's built on lies." The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken truths. I could see the wheels turning in Nate's mind, the realization that his charm and excuses would no longer save him. Then, in a move I hadn't anticipated, Nate turned to Lorraine, desperation coloring his voice. "Mom, you know I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just trying to help Alara." Lorraine's expression softened, but only slightly. "I believed in you, Nate. But you need to take responsibility." Confrontation was reaching its peak, the tension crackling like electricity. I knew it was time to reveal my final card, the one thing that changed everything. "I'm pregnant, Nate," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "And I won't let our child be part of this mess." His face blanched, the color draining as the weight of my words hit him. "Pregnant?" he echoed, disbelief mingling with something akin to fear. "Yes," I confirmed, my hand instinctively resting on my stomach. "This changes everything." The revelation shifted the dynamic, adding a new layer of complexity to the confrontation. Nate's eyes darted between us, the reality of the situation sinking in. "I want to be there for you, for our child," he said, his voice tinged with desperation. I shook my head, the decision already made. "You need to prove you can change, Nate. Until then, I can't trust you." The words were a final blow, the culmination of everything we'd been through. Nate's shoulders slumped, the fight leaving him as the reality of his actions settled over him. As we stood there, the core themes of justice and protection came into sharp focus. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about ensuring a safe future for my child, about breaking free from the cycle of deceit. With Lorraine and Tessa beside me, I knew I wasn't alone. Together, we'd face whatever came next, armed with the knowledge that we'd done everything we could to seek justice and protect those we loved. As we turned to leave, I felt a sense of closure, a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. Path ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to face it, determined to build a life grounded in truth and resilience. In the months following the confrontation, life slowly began to find its rhythm again. The storm that Nate had unleashed left scars, but it also revealed unexpected blessings and new beginnings. Community Park Project, which had once felt overshadowed by personal chaos, became my sanctuary. It was a space where I could channel my energy and passion, creating something beautiful and lasting for others. Lorraine and I grew closer, our bond forged in the fires of betrayal and resilience. She became a constant presence, offering support and wisdom as I navigated the complexities of impending motherhood. Together, we found strength in each other, a newfound family built on honesty and shared experiences. One afternoon, as we sat together in the park, Lorraine turned to me, her expression thoughtful. "You know, Alara, I've been thinking a lot about the future." I nodded, sensing the weight of her words. "What about it?" "I've decided to include you and the baby in my will," she said, her voice steady and filled with warmth. The gesture took me by surprise, a testament to the depth of our connection. "Lorraine, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," she replied, her eyes soft with affection. "You're family now, and I want to make sure you're taken care of." Her words were a balm, a reminder that even amidst the chaos, there were moments of grace and kindness. It was a resolution I hadn't anticipated, a final twist that solidified our bond and offered a sense of security for the future. As the days turned into weeks, the whispers of Nate's deceit faded, replaced by the laughter and life of the community I was helping to build. Park became a symbol of renewal, a place where people could come together and create new memories, just as I was doing. One evening, as I was leaving the office, I received a call from Harold Mercer. His voice was calm, a stark contrast to the turmoil of our last encounter. "Alara, I wanted to thank you," he said, gratitude evident in his tone, "for everything you did. It couldn't have been easy." I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "It wasn't, but I'm glad we found the truth." "There's something else," he continued, a hint of hesitation in his voice. "We've decided to start a foundation in Emily's name, to help others who might be in similar situations." The news was unexpected, a resolution that added a layer of depth to the journey we'd all been on. "That's wonderful, Harold." Emily would be proud. As I hung up, I felt a sense of closure, a realization that even in the darkest times, light could be found. It was a reminder that justice wasn't just about punishment, but about healing and growth. With the foundation of my new life solidifying, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The themes of revenge and justice had evolved, revealing the true power of resilience and the importance of protecting those we love. But even as I embraced the future, I knew some questions would remain unanswered. Nate's actions had left a mark, a lingering reminder of the complexity of human relationships and the choices we make. As I walked through the park, the evening sun casting long shadows, I felt the gentle flutter of life within me. It was a promise of new beginnings, a testament to the strength I'd found in adversity. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had taught me the value of truth and the power of forgiveness. And as I looked toward the future, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them with courage and hope. Path wasn't always clear, but with the support of those around me, I was confident in my ability to navigate whatever came next. The story of Nate's deceit had come to an end, but my story was just beginning, filled with the promise of new life and the enduring strength of the human spirit.
I never thought juggling cameras, kids, and a calendar crammed with appointments would be my daily circus. But here I am, at 39, a freelance photographer with a life that's always a click away from chaos. My name's Sarah, and my world revolves around two things: my camera lens and my family. My husband, Mike, is the kind of guy who's married to his job. He works as a sales rep for a company with branches across 3 cities. I can't remember the last time we had a meal together without him rushing off or being glued to his laptop. And then there are our kids, Lily and Max, both in school, and a whirlwind of activities and homework. "Mama, have you seen my math book?" Lily's voice snaps me back from my thoughts as I sort through my camera gear. "It's probably under the pile of clothes in your room," I reply, without looking up. Max runs in, his soccer ball thumping against the walls. "Mom, can you sign this form for my field trip?" "Sure, bud. Just give me a minute," I say, balancing a camera in one hand and the form in the other. As the kids dash off to their rooms, I hear the front door open and close. Mike's home, probably just to grab something and dash off again. His presence in the house has become like a cameo appearance in a long-running show. "Hey, Mike, how was your day?" I ask, not expecting much of a conversation. Same old, just tired. Got another trip tomorrow," he says, barely looking up from his phone. "I was thinking maybe this weekend we could do something as a family. You know, take the kids out or something," I suggest, hoping for a change. "Yeah, maybe. I'll see how it goes," he replies, his attention still on his phone. I sigh, realizing it's a lost cause. It's always maybe or we'll see. The kids and I have become experts at filling in the blanks of his absence. The evening rolls on with the usual routine: dinner, homework, bedtime stories, and finally, some quiet. I sit on the porch, my camera by my side, capturing the night sky. It's my moment of peace, a brief escape from the relentless pace of life. But who am I kidding? Even in these quiet moments, my mind races with tomorrow's to-do list, unanswered emails, and the ever-looming question, when will things change? As I head back inside, I make a mental note to check my schedule for next week. It's a balancing act, and I'm the ringmaster of my own chaotic circus. But in this hustle and bustle, I often wonder, when did life become a series of tasks to tick off rather than moments to live? Life as a freelance photographer is never predictable, but nothing prepared me for the curveball I was about to receive. It was just another Wednesday morning, and I was out for a walk with our dog, Buster. The sun was shining, but my mind was cloudy with thoughts of upcoming projects and deadlines. "Come on, Buster, let's make this quick. Mommy's got a ton of editing to do," I muttered, tugging slightly at his leash. Just as we turned the corner near the park, Buster spotted a cat, and in a split second, everything went haywire. He lunged forward, pulling the leash with such force that I lost my balance and fell hard onto the pavement. "Ow! Buster, stop!" I yelled, but he was too busy chasing the cat to notice. I tried to get up, but a sharp pain shot through my leg. Great, just what I needed. Limping back home, I called Mike. "Hey, I think I hurt my leg. Can you come home early?" "Sarah, I'm in a meeting. Can it wait?" His voice was curt, a clear sign of his irritation. "I just fell, Mike. It's not like I'm calling for fun," I snapped, frustration boiling over. "Fine, I'll see what I can do," he replied, and the line went dead. After what felt like an eternity, I made it home. The pain was getting worse. I knew I had to see a doctor, but with Mike's unpredictable schedule and the kids at school, it was a logistical nightmare. The diagnosis was a fractured leg. Great. Just what I needed on top of everything else. The doctor advised rest, meaning no shoots, no chasing after the kids, nothing. As if my life wasn't chaotic enough. Back home, with my leg in a cast, I felt like a bird trapped in a cage. Mike had to take over some of my duties, which he did with an obvious lack of enthusiasm. "This is a real mess, Sarah. How long till you're back on your feet?" Mike asked, his tone more concerned with the inconvenience than my pain. "A few weeks at least. It's not like I planned this, you know," I retorted, my patience wearing thin. The kids were surprisingly helpful, though. Lily took over some of the house chores, and Max tried his best to be less of a tornado around the house. "Mom, can I get you anything?" Lily asked, her concern genuine. "Just some peace would be nice," I replied with a tired smile. Days turned into weeks. I was stuck at home, my world reduced to the four walls of our living room. Mike was out most of the time, and the kids were busy with school. The loneliness was suffocating. In a desperate attempt to find something to occupy my time, I decided to explore photography forums online. Little did I know, this decision would turn my world upside down. Stuck at home with my leg in a cast, I found myself diving deeper into the world of online photography forums. It was a nice distraction, scrolling through endless galleries of beautiful images. It almost made me forget the throbbing pain in my leg. Almost. One evening, while mindlessly browsing, something caught my eye. A photo of a man proposing to a young woman. The scene was picturesque, but it wasn't the romantic setting that grabbed my attention. It was the man in the photo. He looked exactly like Mike, my husband. Same build, same hair, even the same suit that I had bought him last Christmas. "No, this can't be," I murmured to myself, my heart pounding. "It just looks like him, that's all." But the more I looked at it, the more I couldn't shake the feeling. It was more than just a resemblance. I had to know more. I messaged the photographer, a woman named Jenna. "Hi, Jenna, I came across your photo of the marriage proposal. Can you tell me more about it? Where was it taken?" Jenna replied quickly. "Sure, that was taken in Riverdale. Lovely couple. Why do you ask?" I hesitated, not sure how to explain without sounding paranoid. "I was just curious. The man in the photo looks a lot like someone I know." I waited anxiously for her response, hoping she'd offer more information. But instead, she went silent. No reply came. Days passed, and the image haunted me. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time Mike came home, I studied his face, looking for any sign of guilt, any hint of betrayal. But he was his usual detached self, buried in his phone or laptop. One evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I confronted him. "Mike, have you ever been to Riverdale on your business trips?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Yeah, a few times. Why?" He didn't even look up from his phone. "No reason. Just asking," I said, my voice trembling. The uncertainty was eating me alive. I had to know. I messaged Jenna again, this time more directly. "Jenna, I need to know. The man in your proposal photo, can you send me more shots of him? I think he might be my husband." This time, Jenna responded, "I'm sorry, I can't do that. It's against my policy to share personal photos without my client's consent." I pleaded, explaining my situation and my growing suspicions. After what felt like an eternity, Jenna finally relented. "Okay, I understand. I'll send you a few more shots, but please keep this between us." When the photos arrived, my heart sank. There he was, my Mike, down on one knee, holding a ring to a woman I had never seen before. The same loving gaze he once gave me was now directed at her. I sat there, staring at the screen, tears streaming down my face. My world, my marriage, everything I believed in, shattered in an instant. I never imagined myself in the role of a woman who'd hire a private detective. Yet, there I was, sitting across from Rick, a seasoned investigator with a face that didn't give anything away. I handed him photos of Mike and a list of cities he frequently visited. "I need to know what he's doing on these trips," I said, my voice a strange mix of fear and resolve. Rick nodded, his eyes scanning the photos. "I'll track his movements, see who he meets, but it's going to take some time. You okay with that?" I was far from okay, but I nodded. "I need the truth," was all I could muster. As Rick delved into his investigation, I was forced into a role I never wanted, the wife who pretends everything is normal. Mike, oblivious to the storm brewing, continued his business trips, leaving me alone with my swirling thoughts. I started noticing changes in Mike that I'd never seen before. His wardrobe underwent a transformation, suits that screamed designer labels, shoes that weren't from our usual budget stores. His cologne was different too, replaced by a scent that was more refined, more luxurious. These were subtle changes, but to me, they were glaring. Then there were the phone calls. Mike had always been private with his phone, but now it was excessive. He'd lock himself in the bathroom, speaking in hushed tones. I once pressed my ear against the door, trying to catch snippets of his conversation, but all I could hear was the muffled sound of his voice. I watched him closely, trying to find traces of the man I married in his new persona. But with every passing day, he seemed more like a stranger. I wondered how long he had been living this double life, right under my nose. The kids started to notice the tension. Lily, ever perceptive, asked one night, "Mom, is everything okay with you and Dad?" I forced a smile. "Everything's fine, sweetie. Just a lot on my mind with work." But it wasn't fine. The man I shared my bed with, the father of my children, felt like a mirage. I found myself lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, piecing together the lies and half-truths. One evening, as Mike prepared for another trip, I found myself watching him pack. He moved with such ease, a routine he had mastered. There was no hesitation, no signs of guilt. It struck me then how easy it is to deceive someone who trusts you completely. I reflected on our years together, wondering when the lies began. Had I been naive, too trusting? Or had I chosen to ignore the signs, too wrapped up in my own world? Weeks went by, and Rick finally called. "We need to meet." His voice was serious, carrying a weight that made my heart sink. We met at a quiet corner of a nearly empty cafe. He slid a thick envelope across the table. "I found quite a bit. You sure you're ready for this?" I wasn't sure of anything anymore, but I nodded. Inside the envelope were photos, receipts, and detailed reports. Every piece of evidence was like a knife twisting in my heart. There he was, my Mike, but not the Mike I knew. In each city, there was a different woman, a different life. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and betrayal. My mind raced with questions. How could he do this? How long had he been living this lie? I paid Rick, barely speaking as I left. Walking home, the envelope felt like it weighed a ton. I realized then that all this while, I had been living with my eyes closed. I had refused to see the man Mike had become, clinging to the image of the husband I thought I knew. Now, with my eyes wide open, I saw everything clearly. The lies, the deceit, the reality of my marriage laid bare. It was a truth I couldn't run from anymore. Holding on to the truth about Mike's infidelities was like keeping a storm inside me. But I kept the photos a secret. I wasn't going to let him off easy. No, he deserved more than just a confrontation. He deserved a reckoning. I wanted to give him an unpleasant surprise, one that he'd remember for the rest of his life. As the days passed, my leg finally healed. I could walk without wincing in pain, a small victory that felt like a fresh start. But as one part of me healed, another part plotted revenge. Mike continued his routine, unaware of the storm brewing under his nose. He left for his trips and came back, slipping further into his web of lies. He thought he was smart, but he didn't know that I was now playing the game too. I crafted a plan, something that would expose his deceit in the most dramatic way possible. I wasn't going to tip my hand by letting him know what I knew. No, this had to be a surprise. I spent hours thinking, planning, making sure every detail was perfect. I watched him, pretending everything was normal, but inside, I was counting down the days. My heart had turned cold, each beat a reminder of his betrayal. Finally, everything was in place. The trap was set, and all I had to do was wait for the right moment. Mike was oblivious, still wrapped up in his lies, thinking he had fooled me. He had no idea what was coming. As I lay in bed that night, the phrase, "Revenge is a dish best served cold," echoed in my mind. I realized that was exactly what I was doing, serving him his just desserts, cold and unyielding. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, about taking back my life from someone who thought he could play me for a fool. The night I planned to confront Mike was etched in my mind like a date with destiny. I cooked his favorite meal, set the table with our best china, and even put on the dress he always said he liked. It was all a facade, a stage set for the final act. Mike walked in, looking tired but surprised at the effort I'd put in. "Wow, what's all this for?" he asked, a slight smile playing on his lips. "Just felt like doing something special," I replied, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside. We sat down, and for a while, I played the part of the doting wife. We talked about mundane things, but I was just biding my time, waiting for the right moment. The doorbell rang, and that was my cue. "Can you get that, honey?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. Mike got up, still unsuspecting, and walked to the door. I heard his footsteps, the door opening, and then a moment of silence before his voice, laced with shock. "What are you doing here?" I walked to the doorway, and there they were, the girl from the photos and her parents. The look on Mike's face was priceless, a mix of shock, fear, and confusion. "Sarah, what is this?" Mike turned to me, his voice a mix of accusation and panic. "This is me, giving you a taste of your own medicine," I said, my voice cold and sharp. The girl, tears in her eyes, confronted Mike. "You said you loved me, that we were going to be together." Her parents were furious, demanding answers, their voices raised in anger. Mike tried to speak, but words seemed to fail him. "You've been living a lie, Mike, and I have all the proof," I said, holding up the envelope Rick had given me. Mike's face went from red to pale. He looked at me, then at the girl and her parents, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "You're a liar and a cheat," I spat out, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. The room was filled with shouting, accusations flying. Mike tried to explain, to apologize, but it was too late. The truth was out, and there was no going back. As the girl and her parents left, the reality of what had just happened seemed to sink in for Mike. He looked at me, his eyes searching for something, maybe forgiveness or understanding. But all I felt was disgust. "You need to leave," I said, my voice void of emotion. He didn't argue, just packed a few things and left. The house was suddenly quiet, the echoes of the confrontation still hanging in the air. The days following the confrontation were a blur. The house, once filled with the noise of our family, now echoed with a haunting silence. I kept busy, trying to distract myself from the emptiness and the hurt. Lily and Max knew something was wrong. They could sense the change in the air, the absence of their father's presence. I sat them down one evening, knowing I had to explain things, even if it broke my heart. "Kids, your dad and I, we're going to be living apart for a while," I said, my voice trembling. "Why, Mom? Did we do something wrong?" Max's innocent eyes searched mine for answers. "No, honey, it's not you. It's just, Dad made some mistakes and we need some time apart," I tried to explain without revealing too much. Lily, older and more perceptive, understood more than I wished she would. "Is Dad not coming back?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know, sweetheart," I replied, holding back my own tears. I started the divorce proceedings, a process that was both liberating and soul-crushing. Mike tried to reach out, sending messages of apology, of wanting to talk. But I couldn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The legal battles began. I fought for the house, for alimony, for everything we had built together. It was a messy, painful process, but I was determined to get what we deserved. One day, I was going through some old boxes and found a photo of Mike and me on our wedding day. I stared at it, at the happy, hopeful faces we once were. It felt like a lifetime ago. "Why did he do it, Mom? Why did Dad hurt us?" Max asked, coming into the room. I put the photo down, looking at my son. "Sometimes people make bad choices, Max, and those choices hurt the people they love." "But do you still love Dad?" he asked, his eyes full of confusion. I sighed, a mix of sadness and resignation in my heart. "I don't know, Max. I'm just trying to figure out what's best for us now." The weeks turned into months. The divorce was finalized, leaving me with a mix of relief and a deep sense of loss. I started focusing more on my photography, taking on more assignments. It was a way to rebuild, to find myself again. One evening, Lily came to me. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" I hugged her, feeling her small body shake with sobs. "Yes, we are. We're going to be just fine." Life didn't stop after the divorce. If anything, it kept moving at a relentless pace. The kids and I settled into a new routine, finding our footing in this altered reality. We were a team, the three of us, facing each day with a mix of resilience and hope. As for Mike, I heard bits and pieces through the grapevine. His world, it seemed, was unraveling at the seams. The women he deceived banded together, filing a collective lawsuit against him. The scandal spilled over into his work, leading to a demotion. He was drowning in debts and legal troubles. But that part of my life was behind me. I had more pressing, more pleasant things to focus on. One sunny afternoon, while I was setting up for a family photo shoot in a park, Lily called me. Her voice was bright, filled with excitement. "Mom, guess what? I won first place in the art competition." "That's wonderful, Lily. I'm so proud of you," I replied, my heart swelling with pride. Max, too, was thriving. He had found a passion for soccer and was making new friends on the team. "Mom, you should come to my game this Saturday. I might score a goal," he said one evening, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. Life with the kids was busy, filled with school events, soccer matches, and art exhibitions. We were a tight unit, supporting each other through thick and thin. My photography business was also picking up. I landed a few big contracts, photographing events, and doing portrait sessions. The lens was my window to the world, allowing me to capture moments of joy, of life moving forward. One evening, as I sat editing photos, I reflected on the past months. The pain of betrayal, the turmoil of the divorce. It all seemed like a distant memory now. I had found strength I didn't know I possessed. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was my friend and neighbor Martha, dropping by with some coffee and a friendly smile. "How are you holding up?" she asked as we sat in the living room. "I'm doing okay, actually. Better than okay," I replied, a sense of contentment washing over me. "That's great to hear. You know, you've really inspired me with your strength." Martha said, her eyes sincere. We chatted for a while, talking about work, life, and everything in between. It was nice to have a friend who understood my journey. As Martha left, I looked around my home, filled with laughter, love, and the evidence of a life moving forward. The hardships had not defined us. Instead, they had forged us into something stronger. Life was good, not perfect, but good. And for now, that was more than enough.